just hit a speed bump, and tariffs may be partly to blame. GDP slipped 0.3% last quarter, marking the weakest growth since the pandemic. I spoke with Dr. Michael Greiner out of OU about it all. If you frame the first quarter contraction of GDP in terms of maybe a transitory misalignment between our gross domestic product and our gross domestic income, because we had this surge in imports. Some of this, by the way, the president has alluded to multiple times, that we have to increase revenues in this country. And then one of the ways to do that, obviously, a very good way, in fact, is to do that through tariffs. Could the misalignment be the reason that we saw this contraction in the economy?
That could be. And again, this is, I think, where Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve right now are kind of on a wait-and-see approach, where there is so much uncertainty out there. Tariffs can, in fact, be a way to generate revenues. There's no question about that. The problem is, though, that each of these approaches are mutually exclusive. They require a different kind of tariff. For example, if you were to say that you want to increase revenues, then actually you want to have tariffs relatively low, because if you don't want people to slow their buying, you want people to still buy stuff, but then for them to, a certain percentage of that to go towards government revenues.
There obviously are some geopolitical issues that have to be factored into what happens with the world economy, and namely these protracted discussions between the United States, bilateral talks, we should say, also between the United States and Iran, which have been somewhat stalled. How do you see those discussions, especially with a non-dollarized oil market in our future already looming based on what the Saudis have already done, how that might shape things? I mean, we can't forget about how important oil is to our economy.
The politics of oil right now and the potential economic impacts one way or another are very complex. For example, just this morning, word came out that OPEC Plus, particularly led by the Saudis, were actually increasing production, despite the fact that actually the cost of oil right now is lower than they would like to see. Now, that ends up being a benefit for most Americans, both at the pump, but also, a lot of the goods that we use in the United States and a lot of the agricultural products that we use. Energy is also a huge part of the U.S. economy. That the United States right now is a massive exporter of both natural gas and oil, and to the extent that prices go down there, then that hurts that portion of the economy.
We continue to see elevated Treasury yields, and while the dollar is still relatively strong globally, there is downward pressure on the dollar, and there is this current feedback loop between the Treasury and capital inflows and who's selling, who's buying. I wonder if we're moving more towards a bifurcated regime where either you're on board with the dollar or you're not. Get on board with the dollar or don't. And that could eventually not just sink the American economy, but the global economy. Because there isn't another good fiat currency alternative right now. Where are we going?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I'd say that the biggest potential currency that could replace this, of course, is the euro. But the euro, really hasn't had the kind of stability and the long track record that the dollar has, obviously. The Chinese would love to see the renminbi become the fiat currency. But the problem that you've got there is that they actually manipulate it too much, that it doesn't have the kind of transparency that markets would like to see. Frankly, I'm a little bit skeptical over the fear that the dollar could be replaced as the global currency, simply because of the fact that it's got what we call network externalities, where essentially because everybody's using the dollar, everybody else uses the dollar.
And if you think consumers haven't noticed, confidence just plunged to a 5-year low.